Action. And my name is Jim Bartlett. I'm Executive Director for the North Dakota Homeschool Association. And so we wanted to take a little time to give you some orientation, both to the day and to the bill and to the recent activity that we've had on the bill, including the newspaper articles, and then answer any questions and give you some ideas of what we can do with what we know today. Before I get that started, I wanted to mention the Homeschool Convention coming up real soon. We've got a table with some of the booklets there, and if you need one of those, you can take that. But also there's a choir, the Homeschool State Choir. It's going to be singing on March 5th in Jamestown, and it needs some more good voices, or any voices, I'm sure. Just if you can make a joyful noise to the Lord, that would be the only requirement. And so if you could sign up for that, we'll have this sign-up sheet on the table with the homeschool booklets for the convention. I was going to also mention, think about this as we get going, as we have time, have you come up and tell us what's at your table. And so then other people can know what is at your table in case you get to talking to legislators or others about something, and you can point them to other people's tables. So that's what I've been doing already, is just point people to different areas. So let me begin with prayer, because the spiritual aspects of the legislation are really probably the most significant. We've already seen many already answered in prayer, and it's been really amazing. We can tell you stories, but Father, we just want to thank you for being our Lord and Savior. Thank you that Jesus is the King of Kings, and He really does have all things under control. Lord, we know that you, that man can plan his way, but the Lord directs his steps, and so we want to just offer this day to you and our bill to you, so that good would come from it, and that you would get the glory in all of the details. So we thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen. To give you some orientation, first of all, to the day. It's kind of hard to schedule because things happen differently every day. And even the schedule that's posted and that you can pick up in the booth might be different than what really happens, because the committee chairs change things as they need to during the day. And so in the morning they have committee work, and so if you can or are going to talk with your legislators, one place to find them is at their committee work. So you can catch them before or after a committee meeting, or when they're on their way to the bathroom, or any way that you can, because they're usually zooming back and forth. They really have very busy days. So you could, sit in on one of the committee meetings if you wanted to. We do need people staffing the tables here too, so don't take off that if that's what they're doing, because that's another way we're going to catch people today, is pointing them to the tables. In the afternoon, they have their general sessions where they're voting on bills. So another way that you can communicate with your legislator is ask if you can sit with them. And maybe even sit with one that's not your legislator might be another idea. If you just know them, or we can point you to one that we think is friendly. Or otherwise, might need to point you to some that aren't friendly. And so that might be really good to do. So anyway, there's plenty of seats in there besides those for the legislators, and they usually are quite happy to have young people and old people in and to learn about the process. And I always joke that maybe they let you push the button, but I don't think we can do that. And so that's one way to get into the details. We've also got some data posters around, and so I'm looking for a couple people to stand near the posters. If we had enough, we may not have enough, but there's a couple of key posters down near the exits to the chambers. One that shows the data regarding SAT scores and the level of regulation for states. So the higher the regulation in the state, the lower the SAT levels. A little bit, you can say maybe it's not a huge amount, but a little bit. If there's any correlation at all, the higher regulation states on homeschooling would have a lower SAT scores as a result. And so that's one of the data points we use to show that standardized achievement testing is not as good as SAT in terms of an overall evaluation of homeschooling, and look at the regulation on states is really not making a difference in terms of the output of the students' knowledge on SAT scoring. Another data point that's emphasized down there, we've had a lot of comments from senators already saying that, make sure all the senators see this. is the level of spending. So homeschoolers on average spend $600 on a homeschool curriculum from Brian Ray's studies, and some less, some more. And then public school around $9,000 for the 50th percentile. For the homeschoolers are up in the 80th percentile or higher for $600 a year. So that also is a helpful point, and especially when the senators are focused on some of the budget issues, can really make a big point. So if you want to use that point as you're talking to people, that one seems to be helpful. Another helpful point we found really from a Botno session with legislators and other homeschoolers is to try to help them understand how the cracks are filled. Because one of the mantras that we hear in opposition to the bill is that someone might fall through the cracks. We're going to make sure that our children, this is the state speaking, our children are ensured a quality education with qualified teachers for all, something close to that. And so you can have, there's many ways to point that out. What I'm pointing out now is that Homeschool Association and other associations have worked for 20 years to develop networks of people, conventions, booklets, information sources, nationally and locally, so that there's not many ways to fall through the crack if you don't want to fall through a crack. And so there's a lot of resources that people can take advantage of. And so I know probably most of us have a great testimony on how many more friends we have now than we did before we started homeschooling, or when we just started, because we get to know each other. And so if we can explain that and elaborate on that, so then the only remaining crack are those parents that really are abusive or simply doing evil. And in that case, neither public school nor the homeschool law, the statutes, are able to cover that. I mean, because they can be at home doing nothing, doing evil, and therefore, the homeschool law doesn't cover that. I mean, so in terms of what we're asking in our bill, it's irrelevant. The police department is still there. The social service system, unfortunately, is still there. But there is other systems to cover evil. And so it really does not impact the homeschool monitoring, for instance, or testing is not going to, or the lack of those is not going to at all help a case where the people are at home doing nothing or evil. And so that might be a point to, when you're talking with legislators, try to get right down to the bottom, okay, which person are you thinking of, and what's the particular case that you're concerned about, and really nail it right down. Because a lot of times you'll hear they're very supportive of homeschooling, and then they'll keep walking. Okay, so find out, how are you supporting homeschooling? Are you ready to vote for the bill that we're asking this time? Are you that supportive, or is there some concern that you have? And then try to get them in discussion any way that you can. It's very helpful. And if you can report back to me or others, just what are the concerns? And I've been doing that with several legislators. And so far, I'm surprised, this session I'm not hearing concerns as much as I have in the past. And so I think that's good. And so is there okay, so for a quick review on the bill, most of you probably have heard this enough already. But there's 5 aspects to the bill. The first aspect is the removal of the sunset clause. Okay, so far, I don't think, no one has been saying that's going to be an issue. And so hopefully that won't be easily passed and incorporated. The sunset clause, if it is not removed, language in the home will be returned to the statutes. And so then officially, homeschooling can only occur in the home, not at the zoo or the library or the state capitol or anywhere else, including field trips. So I mean, it's ridiculous to not have that incorporated. Also, the other aspect of the sunset clause is to remove the restriction on those that have a bachelor's degree and teacher's certificate. If you do not have those and only have a high school diploma or GED, you can monitor, you can homeschool now without a monitor. And if that sunset clause is not removed, it would return to the 2009 version, which would mean you could homeschool without a monitor if you had those qualifications of a teacher, usually have a bachelor's degree or a certified teacher certificate. So even there wasn't even any opposition in the House testimony to that. So we're not expecting any trouble, but if people need to know the details, now you can explain it to them. The monitoring is also removed from everybody with House Bill 1211, that's our bill. And so that might bring up the question, well, you know, a parent that doesn't have a GED or high school diploma supervising homeschool education, well, they might have a problem with that. And so far, we haven't had any testimony against that point. But again, the relationship of the strength of the family has more impact on the education of a child than the education of the parent. And so there's also statistics you've probably seen from Brian Ray and others that show the qualifications. And I've got one booklet on the table here if you need to point to it on that issue, that the qualifications of the parent make very little impact on the nationally norm achievement testing. And so there's two angles there. You can defend that point. And also another point, removing the 30th percentile high stakes aspect. We're using the term high stakes because that is known by the education world as a problem. Because the high stakes testing means that there's consequences and it adds pressure to the teachers and the students. And so we had some very good testimonies that helped emphasize those points there the other day. One of them was a parent with an eye problem, or the child has an eye problem, the parent testified. And so they took the nationally normed test and took all of the tests at one time. And this child had eye problems so that every 20 minutes they needed to rest their eyes, but they couldn't rest their eyes for the nationally normed test. And so then they scored below the 30th percentile and then had to have an initiation of the IEP. And then the parents, were stressed out as well as the child, and they decided that they would buy their own test, hire a proctor to proctor the test, and then gave the test in the sections according to the right times, but on different days, so that the child's eyes had time to rest. And so then the child jumped up to 80th percentile just because he could see the test. Another example of why that's a problem, we didn't get this one in verbal, but it was in writing on Tuesday. Kids were adopted from Ethiopia, and they were brought into North Dakota, and then they were given a standardized achievement test. They scored below the 30th percentile because they couldn't read English, because they just got here. And so then IEP, starts forming these things. And so one thing led to another, and I don't know what they did after that point. Other examples are with the diabetes. A child had diabetes, and it flares up under pressure. And so there's a medical reason why standardized achievement testing was really a burden for that whole family. That was an example there. So there was others. So there's some practical reasons that way. On the testing itself, there's many aspects, and you probably have your own reasons to defend that. So in this bill, the aspect that we are defending the loudest anyway is the testing aspect. And so testing the 30th percentile issue, we explained there a little bit. People might argue that, well, how are we going to know what the children are doing if they aren't testing? And the reason to know for the state or the public school system is that if there was a disability, then if you took a nationally normed achievement test, then we'd know what that disability was. Okay? So the response to that is, well, we knew last time. Because when we test our children every day, we're with them every day, we're watching them, we can see if they're not reading, they can't read the test, or we know if they just came from Ethiopia and they can't read English. There's every day, we're so closely supervising that there's no practical help to us in the nationally normed test, because we know right where they are. And so that would be one aspect to bring about in a discussion on that point. Another aspect that's really an emphasis this time too is the exemption for some parents to not be required to do the standardized testing. And this is a step forward, and basically what the bill says is that if if you have, as a parent, homeschooling, a teacher's certificate or a bachelor's degree, or take a national teacher's exam, then, and have a philosophical exemption, or moral, or religious, to standardized testing, then you can opt out of it. And that's what is written in the bill. And so you can have those objections, explain those. And so I gave you some example there of a medical one and some practical ones, and there's others. If you want to talk to me about the other ones, we can talk about those later. It's interesting, in the committee hearing, the chair of the Education Committee mentioned the idea of only requiring statements of intent, basically enforcing their accounting, essentially. And so that is an idea being floated around in the committee. And as we've seen in the past, we present the bill, what comes out of the committee is something different. It could be something different. And so stay tuned. It's never a done deal until the governor signs it. And so your input to all those things, if you have more questions, you'll let me know. Let's see. I was going to mention a couple of things that's helpful. At the booth of information right behind us there, they sell this law vendors booklet, but they're $5 a piece. But if you want one, it's probably the most handy reference, with phone numbers as well as pictures of legislators and a little bit on their background and, you know, where they're from and stuff. There's other ones that show their seating arrangement. So if you want to figure out where your legislator is sitting, that is their desk. You know, when I say they're going to their office, that's it. For most of them, unless they're majority leader or minority leader. And then another one too that's got more of a list. These two are free, and this one's $5. So that's one way to keep track of, you know, what's going on, or find them when you need them. Just respond to the article in the Bismarck Tribune. There's been a few questions and issues about that. Ben Stegman's writing an article that will reply to that in some fashion. And when I first read it, I thought, okay, this writer was trying to be balanced in their perspective, and at least gave some equal time to the homeschoolers and the public school API. Facts aside, not all the facts are accurate, but I wasn't expecting that. So I think it didn't hurt us, I don't think, but if you had strong feelings about that, let me know. And so we'll leave it at that. But it is a good time to raise awareness, and we are probably going to do another article with Bismarck Tribune this morning and others. So if you have some ideas or want to write to your papers and let them, you know, kind of bring up the volume of homeschooling, that would be helpful. Because between now and the time it goes through the Senate and gets the vote, you know, we've got some time. It'll be a few weeks, because crossover is, I think, 25th or somewhere around that time in February. And then after that, we'll have to go to the Senate and then be voted on. So there's time to influence still. Any questions anybody has about the bill or the day? Okay. I'm thinking that it would be really helpful if you all would come up and just say what's at your table. Maybe somebody from your table could come up and say what you have here, and then we'll all know what's here and know the key points that you have to share. And so then as we're all networking, we can say, oh yeah, I know there's some North Dakota history references down at the nice table down there, or, you know, everyone. So if you could do that, and if there's no other questions, we'll dismiss. We might gather again. We'll see how it goes in the afternoon to talk about other things, but that's the main thing. So no other questions? Dawn, you want to come up and share on the parental rights table, and we'll know what's happening with that?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Warneman, and I'm a homeschool mom of 18 years. A couple of years ago, Michael Ferris was the main speaker in Jamestown, and he was talking about parental rights amendment. And I was really glad for that. Thanks for bringing him in, Jim, because we just didn't really understand everything that was going on. So I became active and I started reading their newsletters online every week and just kind of following what was going on. And I started writing to my congressman in Washington, and they wrote me back and they said, "Oh, you're such a good citizen, Mrs. Mormon. Thank you for your interest in this matter. And I'm glad that you're concerned about children and families. And we'll let you know what we're going to do about it." So I would go to parentalrights.org. That's the website. I encourage you to all go there on a regular basis. And I would check and see, if they were listening to me or not. And I would notice the list of new senators and representatives that were coming on board as sponsors for the Parental Rights Amendment. And never anybody from North Dakota. And I checked this morning, and we still do not have anyone in Congress who's supporting, who's come on as a co-sponsor of the Parental Rights Amendment. So today, I am here to represent parentalrights.org, and at my table, I'm taking signatures of anybody 13 years or older who's concerned about the eroding aspect of parental rights in courts in this country, and people who want to see homeschooling continue for our children and our grandchildren. So that's one thing I'm doing back there, and also my son. I'm hoping he can come up here sometime and talk about what he has been working on. I have 3 children. My oldest is Cora, and we homeschooled her all the way through and graduated her in 2005, and we did the same with our son Andrew and graduated him from our homeschool in 2009, and now I have our youngest, and his name is Jacob, and he was to be in 9th grade in the school system. And so Andrew has become interested in videoing. He's over there. And he has a little business where he goes to weddings and videos and things like that. So I believe he became aware of this little, the North Dakota Teen Safety Driving Contest. And he encouraged his younger brother to enter because you have to be under 18. And so Jacob has been filming those clips here and there of his version of why he thinks it's dangerous to be texting or talking on your cell phone when you're driving. Okay, and it was really quite shocking to me the information he brought forward. In our country, there's over 5,000 people that died last year just because they wouldn't go off to the side of the road. So he has a little presentation that I would like him to show, and he's also showing his 30-second clip back at our table. So I welcome you all to come back.
Mom, we're going to be having a showing of the child.
Pardon?
The child, we're going to show.
Andrew reminded me that we also have the DVD of the child that the parentalrights.org just released recently. It's very professionally done, very uplifting as a parent to listen to it. It's very encouraging to me to realize that I have been doing a very noble work these past almost 24 years of being a mother. And so we were going to be showing that back there at our table at 3 o'clock, the whole thing that people want to watch, or whenever we get done with the legislature.
Hi, I'm Jackie Sigting, and I have a couple tables back there highlighting some of my 5 boys' achievements. And also I have a variety of math tools, manipulatives, and so forth. I think it's really helpful for them to see how we can be creative and effective as home educators. And so there are a lot of things they can put their hands on and see how we can visually see math in particular.
My name is Laura Knight. My husband and I have Knight Publishing. Most of you have probably seen us at conventions. We have a textbook, The Story of North Dakota, on 4 different levels: introductory, elementary, intermediate, and high school level. We do have those with us today. We also have some devotional books. And then all 4 of my children that are home, that's the bottom 4 of 14. They all studied North Dakota history this year, And so we have on a second table, we have displays of some of the projects that they have done this year. So come and see us.
Good morning, I'm Barbara Miller, representing Bismarck Mandan area home educators. And we have a few of the awards that some of our students have won in Science Olympiad. Actually, it's just a few of them, even though it's a table full. In case you're not aware of this, we've gone to national competition with Science Olympiad, and our high school team, which is always short-staffed, has been the only homeschool team to compete at the high school level. There's about 4 other teams that compete at the middle school level. We've got a second table with a few of the scholarships some of our students have been awarded, and some of the work they've done at the college level to show that homeschoolers are capable of competing at higher levels of education. So if anybody has anything like that, I would encourage you, please, to let others know. Don't hide your light under a bushel. Thank you.
I'm Teresa Deckard, representing the Lake Region homeschoolers, and I guess the primary thing on our display shows just some pictures and information about the enrichment day that we do on a weekly basis with our folks up there. We have a few textbooks too, if anybody wants to look at textbooks. There's a few boards there too. We just brought samples of some artwork from some of our students, and also we also have some textbooks just sampling some of the different curriculum that we use. Probably more of a language-based, including a Latin curriculum and also a classical education outline.
Hi, I'm Chris Stevens from Jamestown, North Dakota. My family is here with me. They're in the back over by the table in the center with the black display board. And we recently moved to North Dakota from Idaho. And Idaho really stands out on the map because it's a green state. In fact, it's probably, they claim to have the best homeschool laws in the country. And they go beyond just homeschool freedom, but they actually have in the law protections for homeschoolers. So at our table, we have the black display board, and we try and illustrate that freedom works. And we have some nice charts that kind of demonstrate what freedom looks like, freedom to homeschool, where parents take responsibility for their children's education, and that has a very good effect. And we also have some test scores displayed there that were done by the Idaho Coalition of Home Educators and compared with public school students and so forth. And it's very interesting. So I encourage you to stop by, take a look, meet our family. We have a North Dakota quiz there. We're all trying to learn about North Dakota, so I encourage adults to take the quiz, and we're actually going to have a little drawing at the end of the day. So take the quiz. It's all right if you don't get them all, but you can put it in the box, and we're giving away a nice coffee table book, 20th Century Heroes. It's a great book. So anyway, happy to answer any questions, and hope to meet a lot of you today.
Just want to follow up with the introduction to a few other tables. There's one for the Appleseed Project, which is a marksmanship training plus American history that our boys are instructors for. Over here we've got the Homeschool Association table with the Guide to Homeschool High School and the packet for starting homeschooling. Those things are on the web, so when I'm talking to people, we remind them to take a look there, and they can see what we have. There's a table with the You Can Homeschool brochures. It's kind of the initial information that people get to debunk a couple of myths and understand the list of things that the Homeschool Association does, and wanted to become a member. Another table, we've got some of the practical homeschooling magazines there just to illustrate the resources that are available, not to promote that one only, because there's lots of them. I just had a pile of those available. And we've also could use a few people when you find extra staff, I've been calling them, your children or others, to kind of hang around the posters, understand them, explain them, hang around some of the tables where I don't have people at the moment. So if you have time to do that, that would be great. We've got a table there as well with convention booklets and pictures of convention. So I don't know if we got anybody hanging around that one yet. So with that, that is all we need to say for right now, though we do have a special guest speaker. He just flew in from south of Steele. I can't remember the name of the town. What was that? Kintyre. And so that young man, since we've got a nice time, is Jacob Ornament. And he is actually part of a contest on speaking. And that contest requires that he has an audience of at least 20 people or more to present in order to qualify for the competition, which has a financial reward. I forgot how much. So if you wouldn't mind hanging around a few minutes and listening to our special guest, Jacob Ornament, we appreciate that, and welcome, Jacob.
Well, thank you. Hello, my name is Jacob Ornament. I live on an organic farm near Napoleon, and I've been homeschooled all of my life. Recently, I decided to enter the North Dakota Teen Driving Safety video contest. To enter the contest, I had to film and edit a 30-second video. There were 3 subjects to choose from. 1, seatbelt use, 2, underage drinking and driving, and 3, distracted driving. I decided to make my video, which I will show you at the end of my talk, on distracted driving. I mainly focused on how loud music and texting while driving affect your capability to drive safely. In my research for this project, I learned of a study done by the PEW Research Center on January 17, 2010. I found that a person who texts while driving is 28 times more likely to encounter a collision than people who don't. It is very clear to see that people who text while driving endanger their lives and the lives of others. I personally think that being safe while driving is more important than answering a phone call or a text message. If it is an emergency situation, then please pull over and stop the vehicle completely before you start talking. Another study done by the Virginia Tech Driving Institute showed that people who are texting and driving at a speed of only 35 miles per hour will take approximately 25 feet to stop the vehicle. Comparing this to a drunk driver who will get the vehicle stopped in only 4 feet, you can see how distracting texting really is. Different studies have shown that 28% of all crashes are caused by talking and texting on cell phones while driving. Later in the article, it states that there were 1.4 million car crashes in our country in 1 year. Of these crashes, 200,000 were blamed on texting while driving. That's a whole lot of people getting hurt or killed for no good reason. All of these accidents could have been prevented if people would just have pulled over to the side of the road if they had to answer a call or a text message. In a different study by the PEW Research Center, I learned that among teenagers aged 13 to 18, texting is the #1 form of communication. Cell phone calls are a close second. I also learned that not only teenagers text and drive. 58% of all adults say that they text, and of those, 27% of adults admit to texting while operating a vehicle. This 2008 study revealed that, as a result of these accidents, 5,870 people died, and 515,000 people were injured in our country. To put it simply, if you care about your life, the lives of others, and your vehicle, put your cell phone away until your vehicle is stopped. I invite you all over to our table to watch my video on last year's winners. Thank you for listening, and please drive safely.
Well, thank you, Jacob. That reminded me, I was reading Calvin's Institutes lately, and he mentioned that pictures are the language of the ignorant. And so I was thinking, what is texting? I don't know, but something maybe a little lower than pictures. So thank you. I appreciate your being here and being available, being flexible. You know, on a day like this, we just don't know what's going to happen when, and so keep in touch. And you're as prepared as you need to be to represent homeschooling. So thank you, and appreciate your prayers for the day, and make as many connections as you can. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you didn't hear what we presented earlier, come and see me. We'll tell you individually. Thanks a lot.